listener production.
Hey, Bension Siebert here with the briefing. Millennials and Gen Z are the worst. And that's helping propel forward some truly weird advances in medicine. Let me explain. In Australia, just 1 in 10 young people is registered as an organ donor, despite most people wanting to be. Boomers may have locked us out of the housing market, but we young people are letting the rest of the country down with our organ donation rates. But it's not only young people, and it's not only in Australia. Rising rates of organ failure and too few organ donors worldwide have propelled the science of transplanting animal organs into humans forward. And last month, there was a pretty massive breakthrough. A genetically edited pig's kidney was successfully transplanted into a human male in a world first operation in the US. Transplanting compatible animal organs, tissue and cells offers a lot of promise when actual human donors aren't meeting demand, but it also carries a bunch of potential problems. The body can reject the non-human organs. There's a risk of species hopping new diseases. And then there's ethical concerns over animal rights. To find out more, Wayne Hawthorne, Professor of Transplantation at the University of Sydney, joins us now. Hi Wayne, thanks for joining us on the briefing.
Hi Bension.
So, non-human animal to human transplants have been around for decades, but organ rejection has been a real problem. This was the first successful pig-human kidney transplant in a live human. How big is this achievement and what do you think it means for the future?
I need to put it into context. In Australia last year, we had 513 organ donors for the whole of Australia for the whole year. So that's a very, very low number. Around the world, it's thousands of patients, but you got to think in Australia alone, we have many thousands of patients on our organ transplant waiting list. So 500 into thousands just doesn't go. So xenotransplantation's been around as long as transplantation's been around. The term xeno, meaning something from the foreign or strange, is a Greek word. As long as people have been thinking about transplantation of human to human, we've been thinking about xeno as well. So much so that back in the 1500s and 1600s, they did things like tried to do blood transfusions from lambs into humans to calm their nerves. So it's been around for a long time. The recent advent that you're talking about has come on the back of 30 years of xenotransplant, current technology and current era xenotransplant research. The big step forward with the kidney transplant was the same as what Mohammed Muaddin and the team did back in 2022 with several patients that got heart transplants from pigs. Again, 10 transgene different allow us to transplant animal organs into humans without a massive rejection. Again, the context being it is very, very different to transplant, as you pointed out, a pig organ or cell or tissue into a human compared to a human. The big difference being that there's different epitopes on the cell surface of a pig that says, I'm a pig, not a human.
What's an epitope?
Think of a cell as an orange, and you've got a whole bunch of cloves that you push into it. You've got all these that mark a pig cell as a pig. The problem is as soon as you put a pig cell or tissue or organ into a human, our body goes, hey, this isn't a human cell.
There's
or
cloves
tissue.
all over this orange.
It's got cloves all over it. They're called the alpha-gal transferase. It's a xenogenic antibody, antigen that sits on the surface, and our own immune system recognizes that as pig. It's to stop us from crossing species. And for the last 30 years, scientists, clinicians around the world, we've been working on either taking those cloves out or putting in different ones that say, hey, I'm a person.
And this is the genetic editing part of it, right?
That's correct.
Right.
So the patient that was transplanted with the kidney the other day had basically 11 types of genetic changes. The first one being the alpha-gal to get rid of the very big xenotransplantation response, but then a whole cohort of others to help stop that rejection process.
Why are pigs the ones that we're taking these organs out of? Why are they a good match? And what about other animals?
Look, back in the 80s, there was the transplant of a little baby with a baboon heart called baby Faye. It's probably one of the most famous cases. So non-human primates such as baboons and gorillas and chimpanzees would be a far better match and would have been a far better exercise for us to be able to use those organs to transplant patients. The problem is well, in terms of ethics and so on, but also the breeding of these animals is very difficult. They're protected species. We didn't feel that was appropriate. There's also other associated issues there that would come about. So the thing with pigs is we've been using pig cells and making insulin. So since the 1920s, 1922, we've been using pig insulin. We've been using cartilage from pig and pig heart valves to transplant non-cellular into patients. So the tissues have been used, not to mention the fact that we've got very big facilities for processing pigs and being able to breed large numbers of pigs. The other wonderful thing with genetic technology is you need to turn animals over very quickly to be able to manipulate their genes. Pigs produce within 3 months. You can produce a litter of pigs, essentially.
So there's lots of pigs and they're not a protected species, so we can use them for this purpose more. What conditions can be treated with animal transplants?
My own work, we transplant patients with the little cells in the pancreas called islet cells, the ones that produce insulin. We can transplant those. We're transplanting human-to-human islet cells. But there's also then skin grafts, and we could even develop blood. So blood transfusion is a huge thing that we are always very short of blood transfusions. So if we can do this with whole organs, tissues and cells, we can potentially then also do it with blood vessels and even blood. It's a massive area in terms of medically to be able to treat not just tens of thousands, millions of patients around the world.
So with this recent success story with the transplant of the kidney, does that mean that we could see that kind of treatment rolled out on a larger scale?
Again, to put it into context, these are very early days. You've got to think the very first human-to-human transplant was done in 1954, only 70 years ago. It was done by identical twins. So we've come a huge distance and been able to change organ donation rates. But we started with the very worst cases. Again, the patient that was transplanted, or the patients that have been transplanted in the last few years with hearts and this patient with a kidney, they've been patients that couldn't receive transplants from humans. So the initial steps will be to prove proof of principle again, after we've done so much research, that it can work in the human setting.
So it could be years potentially.
Yeah, we need to build pig facilities that are appropriate for these pigs. We need to then be able to develop the technologies to go with that in terms of management of these transplants.
Tell me if this is a poor analogy. Obviously, I'm not an expert in the subject, but COVID-19 was famously a disease that transferred from bats to humans. With transplants of pig flesh into human bodies, is there an increased risk of diseases that could come from animals into humans?
There's always been a theoretical risk. Whenever we transplant or put anything into our bodies, and that isn't just with animal, that's also humans. So we have a huge screening protocol that we have to undertake to screen human organs to transplant. Back in 2005, we set up a number of committees to actually look at what viruses, bacteria, fungi, and potentially transmitted diseases could be transmitted by doing xenotransplantation. So we have set up the strategies, the technologies and the screening platforms to try and protect mankind, the same as we've done with the human-to-human transplants. And so putting the pigs into what's called designated pathogen-free facilities also, that's where we take the pigs. They're caesarean-derived and they are grown and developed in these very clean facilities. They are also then tested. The herd is tested. The donors are tested. The cells and organs are tested. We are reducing those risks.
Is this legal? It sounds like a very unusual medical treatment to be taking something from an animal into a human. What's the legality around all this?
Well, again, it's like any other cell or tissue. It does come under a legal act. In Australia, we go through what's called the Therapeutic Goods Administration. The application, and I'll refer back to the kidney transplant and the heart transplants done in the US, they first had to prove to the FDA that they could do it safely and efficaciously. And there is legislation in place to allow for this type of transplantation. It's a bit the same as if we're going to transplant titanium hip joints or heart valves. We're already transplanting pig heart valves for decades. So it's another composite type material that goes through the same legislative and regulatory process. So yes, it is legal.
Okay. Well, Wayne, thanks so much for your time. What a fascinating area of medical advance.
Thank you.
Wayne Hawthorne there. That's it for The Briefing today. Check your feed again from 6 tomorrow morning for your next episode of The Briefing, where Sasha and the team will bring you all the news you need to know and another deep dive. Meanwhile, we're working on a special investigation right now into the safety of Australia's online medical certificates industry. Have you ever ordered a doctor's note online? We want to hear about your experience. Send us a DM by searching The Briefing Podcast on Instagram. And if you like what we do here at The Briefing, tell someone about it. I'm Bension Siebert. Catch you soon.